Okay, so the recording has started. So I would request you to write down your name, your roll number, and just write present in the chat box. Okay, your name, your class roll number, and write present in the chat box. Your name, class roll number, and write present in the chat box. Please do that. Okay, please do that. Why it is while we are doing the class. Okay. Yes. Just not your name, roll number, class roll number, and just and write present. Okay, name, class roll number, and write present. Okay. Okay. Yes. Thank you everybody. Now please those who are present, please write down your name and so on. Okay, so let's start the class. So the first lecture that we're talking about is our power system performance. Okay, the whole thing is visible, whole screen is visible.
The whole skin means the function of power system. I mean,
Yes, means
yes, sir. It's visible.
yes, it's visible. Okay. So what is, so first of all, we are talking about power system. We have to understand that what is the function of a power system. Okay. We generally know that power system is generally divided into three parts, that is generation, transmission, distribution, and also we can also talk about the utilization portion also. Okay. But here we'll be dealing with the power system performance aspect of a power system. So first of all, you have to understand what is the function of a power system. So when we're talking about a power system or the function of the power system, the first things that comes that we can define it in this way. Please remember that this function of power system will not be finding in any book. It is just what we have observed by going through this power system syllabus. Okay, so the what should be the function of the power system? It is basically to supply good quality power to the consumers at cheap rate in such a way that the security of the system is maintained. Okay, now let us talk about each one of these qualities one by one. So what do you mean by quality of supply? So how do you measure the quality of supply? You measure the quality of supply by means of, anybody? How do you measure the quality of supply?
Frequency stability
Correct.
and the voltage.
Okay. Let's not talk about the stability now. So quality of supply can be measured by, number one is our voltage. Okay. Then can be our frequency. Then can be our actually the waveform that is coming into our household, and the continuity of the supply or the reliability. Now, when we're talking about the voltage, we all know that the voltage magnitude to be maintained uh, is within a range of plus minus 10% of the corresponding nominal value at each network bus bar. So please remember that at each network bus bar, the voltage magnitude to be maintained is plus minus 10% of the corresponding nominal value. Okay, so if it is 11 kV, so it is plus minus 11 kV. If it is 132 kV, it should be around that only. Now the second what we have our we have second what we have our frequency. Okay, so previously we have studied in our power system planning and design that the frequency to be maintained was within a range of plus minus 3% of its nominal value. Okay, the frequency to be maintained was within a range of plus minus 3% of its nominal value. But please remember that since we have integrated all the 5 grids in India, okay, all the 5 grids in India have been integrated, and we are operating under one grid system. Please remember that now the frequency that is always maintained, it is within a very narrow margin. Nowadays the frequency is maintained within 49.9 to 50.05 hertz. So you can very well imagine that is how all the generators that is connected to this particular grid are all trying to maintain this particular frequency. Okay, 49.9 to 50.05 hertz. Second, or sorry, the third one is our wave distortion or the waveform. So means when we're talking about the voltage and current wave shapes, so we have to see that whether they are sinusoidal or they are having some distortions. Okay, so whenever we are talking about distortions, we can very well imagine that distortion of the waveform can occur due to, anybody? Distortion of the waveform can occur due to
Load variation.
not load variation. Okay, distortion would be occurring due to our
Harmonics.
space. Correct, that is due to the presence of harmonics. Now how now why these harmonics will be entering into the system? The harmonics will be entering into the system because of non-linear loads. I think you have studied the construction of the synchronous generator by now. So we know that the generation voltage and hence the current is always sinusoidal due to the design aspect of a synchronous generator, which is also known as an alternator. Okay, so due to the design aspect of a synchronous generator or an alternator, the generated voltage and hence the current will be always be sinusoidal. So harmonics are generated into the power system by nonlinear loads, and such as what are our nonlinear loads? Obviously our power electronic control devices. Okay, and if we are talking about in terms of a huge system, so what are the power electronic control devices? It is nothing but the HVDC systems or the fax devices. Okay, the HVDC systems or the fax devices which are actually producing this non-linear load, because of which the waveform may get distorted. Now, anybody, what is fax devices? Facts, FACTS, all in capital, means FACT and S is small. Anybody? What is fax devices? Hello, have you heard the term fax? Yes. Any answer? Okay. So the fax is basically flexible AC transmission systems. As the class progresses, we'll be talking. I think you have talked about HVDC. We'll be talking about HVDC system in the other half. In the other half of power system performance, high voltage DC transmission is there. Okay. HVDC is high voltage DC transmission, and fax devices is flexible AC transmission systems, where we'll be using certain thyristorized converters. Okay. To control the power flow through a particular transmission line. A simple fax device can be said as a we can name is our TCST, or is high stress control series capacitor, where we have a capacitor in series in a line which is used for series compensation, which we'll be talking again later in the classes. Okay, so what means, since there is a presence of a power electronic device, so what we can say is that there will be harmonics in the system, and because of this harmonics there will be wave distortion. Understood? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we can also talk about our continuity of the supply, that is whether the supply is meeting the desired level of reliability or not. Okay, that is whenever whether the supply is always available or not, that we can also define from this quality of power. So next, what we had, so in the function of the power system, so it is supply good quality power to the consumers at cheap rate in such a way that the security of the system is maintained. Okay, so number one is our quality of power. We defined what is quality of power. Okay, so the number two is supply power at a cheap rate. Correct? See, supply power at a cheap rate. Okay, second slide is visible.
Yes, sir.
Supplying power at cheap rate, it is visible, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so on what factors does this supplying power at cheap rate depends? It depends upon three factors mainly. Okay, so number one is our optimum design. Second, as you can see, it is economic generation. And the third one is efficient operation. Now, when we're talking about optimum design, we are talking about the optimum design of the whole network, starting from the power plant design to the conductor reaching our homes. Okay, that is our optimum design. When we are talking about economic generation, what do you mean? We try to mean that in operating the system for any load condition, the contribution of each plant and from each unit within a plant must be determined so that the cost of delivered power is a minimum. I'm again repeating, economic generation, we will be talking about economic operation of plant in your other half of power system performance. Okay, so what we are trying to say that in operating the system for any load condition, the contribution from each plant and from each unit within a plant must be taken into consideration, or must be determined so that the cost of delivered power is a minimum. That is our economic generation. And what about efficient operation? Obviously, when you're talking about efficient operation, what we are trying to mean is that for a power system to return a profit on the capital invested, proper operation is very essential. Okay, So we know that we have these regulatory bodies which are fixing the rates, and we have also you have to also keep in mind that due to the conservation of fossil fuels, there is extreme pressure on the power companies to achieve maximum efficiency of operation, and these power companies have to also improve uh, uh, efficiently, okay, in order to maintain a reasonable relation between what is the cost of means what is the cost of a unit to a particular consumer, okay, and what is the cost of to the company of delivering that particular unit to the consumer. Understood what I have said? Shall I repeat? Efficient
No, sir.
operation.
Understood.
Okay, so I think you have understood that when we're talking about efficient operation, power system has to return a profit on the capital investment, because of which efficient operation is reasonable. We have these regulatory bodies which keep on fixing the rates of the uh, power unit, okay, and we have to also keep in mind our conservation of fossil fuel, because of which the power companies has to achieve maximum efficiency of operation and to improve efficiency continually, so that there is a reasonable balance between the cost of electricity generation and the cost of electricity that is actually charged to a consumer. Means all these things has to be kept into mind, keeping in mind the uh, cost of rising price for fuel, labor, supplies, and maintenance. Okay, all these things has to be kept in mind for a typical power station. Okay, next what we have our system security. Now, what do you mean by system security? Just very simple, that the stability of the means the ability of the system, obviously power system, to withstand unplanned disturbances. Okay, ability of the power system to withstand unplanned disturbances. Okay, that is the that is our um, system security. When we are talking about unplanned disturbances, means we also obviously talking about any fault, or suppose means means generally we are talking about these fault conditions only, okay, for any unplanned disturbances. Okay, all the problems that occur within a power system, most of them are unplanned disturbances. Some are planned in the sense that suppose we know that a particular unit has to have a maintenance, so we inform the grid operators beforehand that okay, this unit will not be operating. So since that unit will not be operating for a day or for a few days, then power requirement which was provided by that particular unit has to be bought from some place else. Okay, so that is what we are talking about, a planned disturbance. Whereas when you're talking about any unplanned disturbance, we are all talking about, suppose there is a means storm has occurred, because of which there is a power cut out. Okay, the pole has fallen, means the line somehow has got overloaded. Okay, so because all these things are our unplanned disturbances. Understood till now?
Yes,
Hello.
sir.
Okay, now the first of all, then the question comes that why our system frequency is changing. Okay, why our system frequency varies. Okay, let us try to find that answer. The answer is very straightforward. It is written as unbalance between the active power generation and active power demand. Okay, how we are saying that it is the unbalance between the active power generation and the active power demand? Okay, let us try to find that one, that why frequency changes. We are saying the frequency varies due to the unbalance between the active power generation and the active power demand. Okay, please remember, it is the active power generation and the active power demand. Okay, so that's why the frequency is varying. Just where somebody is trying to enter. Okay, so consider this particular figure. So what we have here T in. Okay, what is T in? What is T in? T in is the, this is the
Mechanical
input torque. Okay, input torque to generator. Okay, T in is the input torque to the generator, and T wow 1 is the output torque of this generator. Okay, suppose we are talking about this figure. Let this figure be our figure A, and this figure be our figure B. Okay, so as you can see in figure A, that only Z1 impedance is connected to this bus bar having frequency F1. Okay, since only Z1 impedance is connected, so at steady state, what we can say, T in is equal to T1. Okay, T in is equal to T1. Now, what about figure B? So, as you can see, in this case, this T in is kept constant. Okay, that's the input torque to the generator is kept constant. But here, what we are seeing, that in this case, both the impedances Z1 and Z2 are connected. Okay, so what is happening? That is, the output torque of this particular generator is increases. Okay, what is the output torque of this particular generator in figure B? It is T2. So it is written as T2 is greater than T in. But please listen carefully. As the input torque is fixed, see, T in is constant. Okay, as the input torque is fixed, so the additional energy demand is initially supplied by what? It is initially supplied by the rotational inertia of the generator. Okay, it is initially supplied by the rotational inertia of the generator, because of which the speed of this rotor decreases. Okay, because of which the speed of rotor decreases. Since the speed decreases, hence the frequency also decreases, and that's why we have said F2 is less than our F1. Understood? Shall I repeat again?
Yes, sir. Please repeat.
Okay, what I am saying, see, figure A, what we have, I am again repeating. Figure A, what we have? In figure A, we have T int as the input torque to the generator, and in this case, only one impedance is connected. Okay, to this particular bus bar. To this particular bus bar, as you can see. Okay, to this particular bus bar, only one input is connected. So at steady state, what we can say, T in is equal to T1. Okay, T in is equal to T1. So now let us talk about figure B. So keeping this figure constant, if T in is kept constant, that's the mechanical power input to the generator is kept constant. At that condition, if this generator, if this impedance Z2 is also connected, then what we have to do means what the synchronous generator have to do. It has to supply power to this impedance also. So the output of this generator is now I1 plus I2, and since the output is I1 plus I2, so the torque of this generator increases. That is, the torque is how much? The torque is our T2. So from where this initial energy is coming, because T in is input torque is constant, this additional energy is supplied by the rotational inertia of the generator, which is stored in the kinetic energy of the rotor. Okay, rotational inertia is nothing but the stored kinetic energy, is nothing but the stored kinetic energy of the rotor. Okay, so the initial energy or the additional energy demand is supplied by the stored kinetic energy of the rotor. If that is the case, then what will happen? The speed of the rotor will decrease. If the speed of the rotor will decrease, then the frequency will also be decreasing. So the frequency F2 is, that's why the frequency F2 is less than F1. So what we can say, yes?
Sir, at what limit the speed will be decreases?
At what?
At what limit?
What limit means? I cannot.
I mean, at what RPM the speed will be decreasing?
Okay, it depends upon the load condition. It is not that it will be means what we are trying to say, that if it is running at 3000 RPM, okay, it will be, we cannot say that at Just wait, somebody's trying to enter. Okay. Okay, for those, before I answer you, for those students who are entering late, please remember, today being the first class, I am allowing you all. From the next day onwards, after 10 minutes, means after 3:10, nobody will be allowed in the class. Okay, please remember this. Okay, to get back to your answer, is that what is happening, that means for that is totally a problem of our machine's part. Okay, that at what rate it is decreasing, at what limit it is decreasing, and so on. We will be only concerned with, okay, the stored energy is decreasing, means the stored energy is being absorbed from the generator to supply the additional demand. That's why the speed will be decreasing. Okay, we are only concerned with the change in the speed, not at what is the rate at which the speed would be decreasing. Understood?
Okay.
Okay, so what we have seen, that there has to be a balance between this active power generation and the active power demand. Okay, there has to be a balance between the active power generation and the active power demand. Okay, so we can think of a very simple power system actually. Okay, so let me change again. Okay, yes, so we can think of it that we have a simple single generator. Okay, and it is supplying through a impedance, suppose Z, to a load. Okay, we can think of it as a single electric generator and a load. Okay, so what is happening, this electric generator is converting the rotational kinetic energy to our electric energy. Now, according to the law of energy conservation, at any instant the power demanded by the load is supplied by the generator and or by the energy stored within this particular system. Correct? So if the consumption of the load increases, the extra demand of the energy is initially supplied by the, what I said, is initially supplied by the rotational inertia of the generator through the decrease of its speed. Okay, now what we know, that the frequency of the voltage in an electrical generator is directly proportional to the rotational speed of its rotor. What is the equation? What is the equation? F equal to
Pn by 120.
correct? Okay, 120 F by P equal to N, or we can just write F equal to Pn by 120. So as you can see that because the frequency of the voltage in an electrical generator is directly proportional to the rotational speed of the rotor. So if the speed decreases, the frequency will also be decreasing. Okay, so if the speed decreases, the frequency will also be decreasing. Now think of the total electrical power system. So the total electrical power system consists of thousands of interconnected generators. Okay, thousands of interconnected generators like this. Correct? Okay, and we have thousands of loads also, Okay, so what we can think, that overall that electric power system can act as a simple one generator, one load system, with the frequency being the same for the whole interconnected power system. Okay, now as you know that the amount of storage of energy in our power system is rather limited. That's why whenever there is an increase in the load demand, the frequency will be shifting. Okay, or the frequency will be decreasing. So as a result, what will happen? As a result, there will be imbalances between the generation and the demand. If there is imbalance between the generation and the demand, then what will happen? Then the frequency would be changing. Okay, then the frequency would be changing. A very simple example we can we can think of that simple load curve. Is the load curve constant? Hello, is the load curve constant? If the load curve is not constant, then the frequency variation will be occurring. Okay, so since frequency is one of the main variables when we are trying to maintain the stability of a particular power system, then it becomes imperative that the frequency change should be occurring within a very narrow band. Okay, the frequency change should be occurring within a very narrow band. Now, the question can be framed in this way, that why it is desirable, okay, why it is desirable to control the frequency. Okay, so what type of answers can we expect? Why the why the frequency control is necessary? The frequency control is necessary because
the load is designed as the frequency, the rated frequency.
Okay.
If the frequency decreases, the machine will be damaged.
Okay, the machine will be damaged. Okay, we can think of it in this way. As you can see, all the factors are given here. Okay, why frequency control is needed? So number one, we can think that the speed of the consumer's plant changes with supply frequency because the production process gets hampered. Why it is so? Please remember that most of the loads in a power system are motor loads. So as the speed of the AC motor will be varying, so supply frequency also varies. Okay, so if the speed of the consumer's plant changes with supply frequency, production process will be getting hampered. Suppose the pump in a washing machine, correct? So if the frequency varies, so the pump in a washing machine the operation of that will also be varying, and will not be getting the desired wash that we required. Second, see synchronous operation of generators. What I have said, that all the generators that is interconnected in a power system are running in synchronization with each other, correct? So for proper synchronous operation, it is desirable that the system frequency be kept constant. Okay. Third point, what we have, active power consumption of a load depends upon the supply frequency. So as I've just said, that as most of the loads in the power system are motor loads, so they have an inherent tendency to consume more active power if the supply frequency increases and vice versa. Understood? Hello?
Yes.
Understood? Okay. Apart from these three, there is another point also. What is the another point? We can think about that that in a traditional power station, the performance of the alternator is dependent on the performance of all the auxiliary electric motor drives that are delivering fuel and cooling, they are used for cooling services for the various systems. These electric motor drives are driving the fuel and the air to the boiler, oil to the bearings. So if these auxiliaries underperform due to the low speed, which is caused by low frequency, then the power station output can be reduced. So what it will lead to, if this phenomena is allowed to continue, then this would lead to a cascaded shutdown of the power station and there will be complete blackout. Understood? We can add that fourth point also, that why frequency control is necessary. So in the quality of power, we also saw another variable. What is the another variable? That is our voltage. Okay, and that is also a very important aspect which guarantees the stability, of an electrical power system. So the question then generally comes that why the system voltage has to be kept constant. So the number one reason is given, as you can see, that the power apparatus are designed to operate at declared voltage. So efficiency and safety of equipments are hampered if proper voltage is not maintained. Correct, that we know that the insulation of a particular equipment depends upon the declared voltage. So if the declared voltage increases, so the insulation will be decreasing and the life of that particular equipment would be decreasing. Correct? Second, what we have what I said, that most of the loads are motor loads. Okay, motor loads, what it will be taking. So all the motor loads are also known as our constant power loads. Okay, please remember, it is known as constant power loads, that is P equal to V into I. So the motor loads will be taking more current at reduced voltage. So what it will be doing, since there is more current is flowing, so more amount of voltage drop, and thus aggravating the situation further. Understood? The motor loads will be taking more current at reduced voltage, causing increased voltage drop, and thus aggravating the situation further. Due to this, since we are trying more amount of motor also, okay, sorry, because these motor loads are drawing more amount of current also, so what it can happen is that there will be increase of buildup of heat within the motor. We can think of that in this way also. There may be a third point. Okay, there may be a third point also, because what is the third point? We can say that a higher than nominal voltage also leads to overcurrents. How? So when we have high voltage is applied to a motor, the motor tends to push the magnetic portion, means the high voltage to a motor tends to push the magnetic portion of the motor into the saturation zone. So what it will cause? It will cause the motor to draw excessive current in an effort to magnetize the iron beyond the point to which it can be easily magnetized. Okay, so because of that also, the motor can take more, means there can be heating and burning of the motor. Understood? Okay, so the system voltage, why the system voltage has to be kept constant? I think that question's answer is also we can found out. Understood till now? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So we have talked about this frequency changes. Now, yes. So as we have studied one thing, that first of all we said that okay, to change frequency, our is why the frequency varies, because of the unbalance between the active power generation and the demand. Then why the reactive power varies? The reactive power varies due to the unbalance of the voltage. Okay, reactive power unbalance is the cause of voltage problem. So how we are stating it? Okay, as you can see in this figure, what we have, as you can see in this figure, we have a high voltage transmission system. Okay, we have a high voltage, sorry, we have a high voltage transmission system, as you can see in this particular figure. Okay, so the impedance of this transmission line from this bus bar, so the bus bar angle is given in this way. So V1 angle 0 degree and V2 is given as our V2 into angle minus delta. Okay, this is given as V2 angle minus delta. What is delta? Delta is the angle between the sending end voltage and the receiving end voltage. Okay, so as you can see, V2 minus delta means the V2 is lagging V1 by delta angle. Okay, so what we have, so the impedance of this transmission line is given as R plus jx. But as you can see that in this particular expression, we are only using our x, means we have taken the x to be much greater than R. Now can you tell me that why we are taking the x to be much greater than R for a high voltage transmission system? Anybody? Why you have taken the x by R ratio very increases in a high voltage system, or we are saying that the x is much greater than R? Anybody?
Surge impedance.
No, nothing about surge impedance loading. Please remember, this is a very important point. Okay, that if you are in a power system, you deal with power system later on. If you are talking about a high voltage system, in a high voltage transmission system, the X by R ratio increases. Okay, for a high voltage transmission system, the X by, okay, let this one be our written as capital I. The X by R ratio is very high. Okay, why it is so? Please remember that, and we are neglecting this value of R. But why it is so? It is so because, please remember that, what is the value of inductance? If you recollect, L equal to, in a transmission line, L equal to Q into 10 to the power minus 7 B by R prime. Correct? Hello, is this okay?
Yes, sir.
Correct? So as you can see, what is D? If you recollect, D is the distance between the conductors. Okay, and R prime is the effective radius. So in a high voltage transmission system, our D is high. Okay, so if D is high, that means our L will be high. If L is high, that means that obviously necessarily translates into that our X will be high. Understood? So R is neglected, and so R can be neglected with respect to our X. Okay, so R is neglected with respect to X. Understood? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And what we can write, we can also write the power balance equation as this much: P plus JQ equal to into V1 into I conjugate. Anybody? Why I conjugate?
To measure the power factor angle, I mean the power angle.
No.
Because when we multiply I conjugate, then we get the accurate power factor angle.
The answer is no. Actually. Okay. The very simple answer is that by convention we take the inductive power to be positive. Understood? We take the inductive power to be positive. If the capacitive power hoto tale ki hoto? You have taken P minus JQ, no? Hello, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think you all know, but just remember that the convention is we take the inductive power to be positive. That's why we take P plus JQ equal to VI into V1 into I conjugate. So if we are to now we have to find the value of, means the expression of V2. So what we have, V2 equal to V1 minus Ij I into J. So what is I conjugate equal to P plus JQ by V1. So taking V1 as the reference, as you can see in this graph here. So I equal to P minus JQ by V1. So if you put this value of I1 into this equation, we are getting V2 equal to V1 minus J, P minus JQ by V1 into X. So separating the real and the imaginary parts, we are getting V2 equal to V1 minus Q by V1 into X minus of J into P by V1 into X. Understood? So as you can see from this particular figure, that if a change in P is occurring, okay, if a change in P is occurring, it is affecting the perpendicular component. Okay, it is affecting the perpendicular component of the voltage drop. So what we can say, that the change in active power demand, okay, that the change in active power demand has little effect on the magnitude of V2. Okay, the change in active power demand has little effect on the magnitude of V2 or on the magnitude of the voltage. Okay, that we can see from here. Similarly, if we change the reactive power Q, as you can see that if we change this reactive power Q, that a change in Q affects the in phase component. Okay, as you can see, a change in Q affects the in phase component, okay, of the voltage drop. It affects the in phase component of the voltage drop. So a change in voltage magnitude is mainly caused by reactive power. Okay, is mainly caused by reactive power. So what we can infer from this particular figure, which we can infer that, I think it is written in the next slide. Yes. Okay, that what we can infer is that, as you can see, number one, active power flow through lines can be controlled by contouring the voltage phase angles. Means if we are controlling this particular voltage phase angle delta, okay, if we are controlling this particular voltage phase angle delta, then we can actually control the active power flow. See, if we are controlling the this delta, then we can control the active power flow through a typical transmission line. Okay, so what we can say? We can say that P and delta have a strong coupling. Okay, P and delta have a strong coupling. Similarly, reactive power flow can be changed by contouring the voltage magnitude. As you can see that the reactive power flow through a transmission line can be changed by contouring the voltage magnitude. If that is the case, then what we can infer is that the reactive power and the voltage has a strong coupling. Okay, that is, reactive power and voltage has a strong coupling. So obviously P and V would is having a weak coupling between them, and similarly Q and delta is having a weak coupling between them. So please remember that this feature and this feature is very much used, or is extensively used in power system for controlling, for power system control actually. Okay, as you can see here, this feature is extensively used for power system control and analysis. Okay, so understood till now? Understood
sir.
till now? Okay, so what is the conclusions? What we can draw from here? The active power generation has to be controlled for controlling the frequency. For controlling system voltage, the reactive power flow has to be controlled. So frequency power control can be done from the power plants only, because we can change the speed of the rotor, and that's why we can change the frequency. So frequency control can be done from the power plants only. Voltage control can be done from the power stations and transmission, as well as distribution substations, because voltage control means there has to be a if we have to change the voltage of a particular area, then we have to means either uh, give or take out reactive power from that particular area. Correct? So it is possible to transmit active power over long distances, and please remember the reactive power cannot be transmitted over long distances because there will be huge voltage drops. That's why reactive power can be transmitted over long distances. It has to be generated locally. Okay, it has to be generated locally. So if we are to say that if we are to conclude for this lecture, so till now what we have understood, we can say in this way, a simple recapitulation we are doing, we can think of in this way, that if this is our let us take a sheet of paper. Okay, let us take a sheet of paper. Okay, and this sheet of paper here, it is our 50 Hz frequency, and it is increasing and decreasing. Okay, so these are our generators. So let this one be G1, let this one be G2, let this one be our G3, and similarly let this one be our loads. Okay, active power demand. Okay, L2 and our L3. So as you can see that whenever the generator or there is more generator, less demand, what will happen? The system frequency will be increasing. But whenever there is more load but the generation is less, then what will happen? The system frequency will be decreasing. Okay, this is for our frequency control. The same thing can be also be drawn for our voltage control also. So for a voltage control, we can think of this of the same sheet of paper, which is at our nominal voltage. Okay, this is our nominal voltage. So the nominal voltage depends upon the typical bus where it is being used. Okay, this is our nominal voltage, suppose V voltage, and this was our frequency. Okay, so this one is our reactive power generated Okay, reactive power, and similarly what we have, we have our reactive power load. Okay, so if more amount of reactive power is there in the system, but the demand for the reactive power is less, then the voltage will be increasing. And if the reactive power demand is more and the generation is less, then what will happen? Then the voltage would be decreasing. So that's why this is used for our, what we have said, this is for our voltage control. Okay, the voltage control. So that's why what we do is that in any bus stations, suppose we use this series capacitors. Okay, switched series capacitor banks are there. Why it is there? It is there to provide, suppose a huge load is connected, a motor load. Okay, so because of which the voltage at a particular bus decreases. Suppose the bus here, the voltage is decreasing. So if the voltage at a particular bus decreases, then the loads connected to this particular bus, they will be also be facing our problems of low voltage. That's why to overcome that, we have to inject capacitive VAR into the system. So that's why what we will be doing, means why capacitive VAR will be needed to increase the voltage of this particular bus bar. That's why we'll be using these switched capacitor banks. So switched capacitor banks will be injecting reactive VAR, okay, into the system so that the voltage again increases. Similarly, if the voltage of a particular bus has increased. So obviously the loads connected to that bus, they will be also facing an increase of voltage. So that increase of voltage will be taxing the insulation of that particular appliances. So we have to decrease the voltage of that particular bus. Then how can we decrease it? Through the use of
Inductive bus.
inductors. Okay, shunt or series inductors will be there. Okay, so the inductors would be they will be absorbing the reactive bars. Okay, they will be absorbing the reactive bars. So by absorption or by controlling the VAR, actually we are controlling the voltage of a particular bus. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Any questions till now?
No, sir.
Anybody? We will be then going into the second slide, which is the most important slide for today. Any questions till now? Hello? Okay, so let's share the second slide. Okay, so the second slide is our synchronous machines. Okay, before we go into the synchronous machines, okay, let us talk about another important part also. Okay, so before we go into synchronous machines, let us talk about another aspect. Okay, that what are the three important aspects which control the operation of a synchronous generators. So since we are talking about, since we'll be dealing into the synchronous generator aspect, so first of all, we have to know that what are the three important aspects which control the operation of a synchronous generator. The three important aspects which control the operation of a synchronous generator is number one is our voltage. Okay. Second is our frequency. And the third is our stability. Now, what is stability of the system? The stability of the system means that how the system retains its operation after being subjected to a disturbance. Now, disturbance can be fault. Okay, suppose a line has means a fault has occurred in a particular line, an over voltage situation has occurred due to voltage excitation. Sometimes what happened, a huge voltage flux is there in the line. Okay, because of some switching operation. So there will be some more amount of voltage in the system. So how the system will be behaving at that particular situation, that is what defines the stability of a particular system. So stability of the particular power system can be defined in this way, that the means the state of operation of the system under any disturbance, that okay, how the system is behaving. So we'll be talking about the stability later. We have a typical chapter only dedicated to power system stability. Okay, now before we go into the details of a synchronous generator, we have to understand that we generally see that this synchronous generator can be represented by something like this. Okay, it is represented by something like this. That if this is a synchronous generator, then it is connected to something like this. Okay, what is this? This is known as our infinite bus. Okay, this is known as our infinite bus. So what do you mean by infinite bus? Let us think about. So as you know that all the synchronous generators that we have in our system are all operating in synchronization with each other. Okay, so all the synchronous generators which are operating in synchronization with each other, they all together constitute a very large power system. So we have one unit, suppose, okay, where we have many synchronous generators connected to that particular bus bar. Now this bus bar is again connected to another bus bar through lines of low reactance, okay, which have again n number of m number of synchronous generators, which is again connected to another bus bar. Okay, like this way we can think that all the synchronous generators are operating in synchronization with each other, and they all together constitute a very large power system. So this can we think of a very large power system. So suppose we have a very we have a 200 megawatt generator. Okay, we have a 200 megawatt alternator which is connected to this particular power system. So as you can see that the capacity of this 200 megawatt synchronous generator is negligible in comparison with such a large system. Correct? Understood? Hello? Hello? Are you all there or not? Can you hear me or not? Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, can you
Yes,
hear
sir.
me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So as you can see what we have, so the capacity of this 200 megawatt generator, as we were saying, is negligible in comparison with such a large system, and the capacity of this particular large power system being very, and the capacity of this large power system being very large, its voltage and frequency remains constant. Okay, so the connection or disconnection of a small machine like this 200 megawatt generator on such a large power system, okay, on such a large power system would not change the magnitude and phase of the voltage as well as the frequency of this large power system. Okay, so we can say that this large system is independent of the power exchange between the synchronous generator and the system, and it is independent, and this large power system is independent of the excitation of the synchronous generator. So since the capacity of this system is infinite, this large power system is termed as our infinite bus. So what are the characteristics of the infinite bus? Number one characteristic is that it is having constant voltage. Okay. Second characteristic of an infinite bus is that talking about infinite bus. Okay. So second characteristic is that it is having constant frequency. Okay. Third is that it is having infinite inertia. Okay. It is having infinite inertia. And fourth is that it is having zero internal impedance. Okay, it is having zero internal impedance. So how can we show that how a synchronous generator is connected to infinite bus? It is shown by this particular figure. Okay, that is, this is a synchronous generator and it is connected to an infinite bus. So the analysis from now on of what is a synchronous generator and how it is operating will be considering that that synchronous generator is connected to an infinite bus. Okay, that synchronous generator is connected to an infinite bus. Understood till now? Hello, understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. I hope this slide is visible. Slide is visible?
Yes, sir. Visible.
Okay, so now we are talking about our how the synchronous generators are working, and what is basically the And how this active power and reactive power we talked about, no, they are related with certain angle and so on. How this angle are coming into play, we'll be talking about them now. Okay, so as you can see that what we have from in the slide, the synchronous machine is an important aspect, is an very important aspect of the power system. It is an AC rotating machine whose speed under steady state condition is proportional to the frequency of the current in its armature. We know that one, we know the equation 120 F by P. And the synchronous machine, it is converting the mechanical energy to the electrical energy, and it's feeding it to the power network. And in the case of an synchronous motor, it is drawing electric power from the network and converting it to our mechanical form. So the machine excitation, as you can know, that the machine excitation of a synchronous machine is controllable, which determines the flow of watts into or out of the machine. And in a synchronous generator, what we have, a DC current is applied to the rotor winding, okay, producing a rotor magnetic field. So the field winding on the rotor is energized from a controllable DC excitation source, okay, and the rotor is driven by external means obviously the turbine is rotating the synchronous generator. So the rotor is driven by external means, which producing a rotating magnetic field, which is inducing a three-phase voltage within the stator winding. So the field windings are the windings producing the main magnetic field, obviously rotor windings for the synchronous machines, and the armature windings are the windings where the main voltage is induced. So the stator windings for the synchronous machine is the place where the main voltage is being introduced, or the main voltage is induced. Okay, we know this one. Just a recap. Okay, so all generators in any power system are synchronous type. There may be induction generators also that we are using for wind power. Okay, so there are two types of synchronous generators. Number one is our cylindrical rotor type. The characteristics of a cylindrical rotor type is small diameter, long rotor, small number of poles, and high speed. So these are used in our thermal power stations, specifically talking about steam power plants. Okay, and second one is our salient pole machine. So for the characteristics of a salient pole type is a projected poles, unequal air gap, large diameter, short rotor, and low speed. And because of this low speed and unequal air gap and projected poles, this is used in our hydroelectric power plants. I'm again repeating the same thing, that we'll be dealing with that aspect of synchronous generator which is relating to our power system only. We'll not be going to the details of the construction and so on. Understood till now? Hello? Understood? Hello, are you there or not? I cannot get you all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So here I have a few pictures on the synchronous generator. So as you can see, this is the stator of a hydroelectric generator. You can just think of this is the rotor of a salient pole alternator actually. Okay, and this is the end view of a turbine generator with water-cooled windings, as you can see. So this is the rotor of a non-salient pole alternator, that means of a cylindrical rotor alternator. So this is the typical figure. As you can see, this is the picture. The left-hand side is of a cylindrical rotor synchronous generator. We have this is the armature windings. This is the field winding. Okay, this is the stator, and this is the our rotor actually. So and this is the DC excitation. So the rotor rotates, and field winding is provided by this DC excitation source. Similarly, we have this salient pole rotor synchronous generators. As you can see, salient pole, I mean, they are projected poles. These are all projected poles. As you can see, because of projected poles, there is unequal air gap length. Here the air gap length, and here the air gap length is different. There is unequal air gap between the stator and the rotor. But as you can see, for cylindrical rotor, there is a uniform air gap. Okay, there is a uniform air gap between the stator and the rotor. So let us talk about a cylindrical rotor synchronous generator. So the cylindrical rotor alternator has a two-pole structure. Okay, so this is the cylindrical alternator. It is having a two-pole structure. This is only for one phase. It is showing. Okay, this is for only one phase. So as you can see that it is having a two-pole structure. The rotor is excited from a controllable DC excitation source, and the rotor contains P belts of slots in which are placed the field winding conductors. So here only 2 slots are shown. Okay, so as you can see here only 2 slots are shown. Okay, whereas the rotor contains P belts of slots. So this is the figure only for phase A. So what we are doing here is that the rotor field conductors belonging to the same belt carry currents in the same direction, while the current direction is alternating in the P belts. Okay. So what do you mean by that? Means if in this belt, current direction will be the same, and if this is into the copy, then it will be outside of the copy. Okay. So it will into the system, outside the system. So what we are trying to say is the rotor field conductors belong to the same belt carry currents in the same direction, while the current direction is alternating in the P belts. Okay. So the resulting rotor MMF will thus alternate around the periphery, informing P magnetic rotor poles. So the resulting rotor MMF will be what it will be doing. It will be alternating around the periphery, in effect forming P magnetic rotor poles. Here one rotor pole it is showing. Okay. So as you can see that for the 2 pole case, the resulting magnetic flux paths are shown. The resulting magnetic flux path are shown. This is the resulting magnetic flux path. As you can see, this is the resulting magnetic flux path for the 2 poles are shown here. And what we have, the magnetic axis of the rotor field winding. Please remember this. Okay, that the magnetic axis of the rotor field winding is referred to as the D axis, and perpendicular to the D axis is found the quadrature of the Q axis. Okay, the magnetic axis of the rotor field winding is referred to as the direct or the D axis, and perpendicular to the D axis is found the quadrature of the Q axis. So the rotor winding is so arranged on the rotor periphery that the field excitation produces nearly sinusoidal flux per pole. So the flux that is produced in the air gap, it is phi f. Okay. So as you can see, the stator has a balanced 3-phase winding. Okay. So the stator has a balanced 3-phase windings. So here it is only shown for phase A. Okay. The stator has a balanced 3-phase winding, and the winding shown is considered at 1, while the winding in an actual machine is distributed across the stator periphery. Please remember the winding here, what it is shown, it is concentrated. It is concentrated, but in real, it is distributed around the stator periphery. So the stator winding or armature is placed in equidistant slots which are located around the total inner surface. The stator winding or armature is placed in equidistant slots which are as you can see in this figure. Okay, and is in the and it is present in the around the total inner stator surface. Okay, so this armature is actually divided into 3 identical phase windings which are placed in 3p phase welds, so each of which spans 120 by p degrees of the stator surface. Okay, so in the 2-pole machine there will be 6 belts, each spanning 60 degree. So as you can see here we have 1 belt each spanning 60 degree, as you can see. Okay, then what we have, so the 3 identical phase windings are interconnected to form a generator neutral which is normally grounded. So here the 3 stator windings are interconnected to form a generator neutral which is grounded. Okay, so what will happen as the rotor rotates, 3-phase EMFs are produced in the stator winding. So as the rotor will be rotating, 3-phase EMFs will be produced in the stator winding. So before we go into that one, okay, so let us talk about that how the equation would be now coming into play. Okay, so since the machine is a balanced one and balanced loading will be considered, it can be modeled on a per phase basis. Okay, since we have considered that the machine is a balanced one and only balanced loading is considered, it can be modeled on a per phase basis for the reference phase A. So what is happening on no load, the voltage EF, okay, as you can see on no load, the voltage EF is induced in the reference phase lag 90 degree. Okay, I hope you all can hear me.
Yes,
Hello.
sir.
Okay, so on no load, the voltage EF induced in the reference phase A lags 90 degree behind phi f, which produces it. Okay, so EF is proportional to phi f, and EF is produced by phi f. Okay, so and is proportional to it if the magnetic circuit is assumed to be unsaturated. So we have assumed that the magnetic circuit is unsaturated, and since means EF is lagging 90 degree, is lagging phi f by 90 degree. So as balanced steady load is drawn from the stator winding, the stator currents produce synchronously rotating flux per pole. That is, it is producing phi a per pole in the direction of the rotation of the rotor. Okay, so this flux is called the armature reaction flux, and this armature reaction flux is therefore stationary with respect to the field flux phi f. Okay, so what we have here, so phi a, please remember that this phi a is in phase with our phase A current IA, which causes it. Okay, next what we have assumed what? We have assumed that the magnetic circuit is unsaturated. So if magnetic circuit is unsaturated, then the superposition theorem will be we can hold the superposition theorem here as true. So if that is the case, then the resultant air gap flux is given by the phasor sum. So it is phi r equal to phi f plus phi a. Please remember that we are arriving at this particular expression neglecting the armature leakage reactance and resistance. Okay, we are neglecting the armature leakage reactance and resistance, and phi r, which is the resultant air gap flux, induces armature EMF, which equals the terminal voltage Vt. Okay, which equals the terminal voltage Vt. Okay, now let us see the phasor diagram. Okay, now let us see the phasor diagram of our particular generator. Okay, so we can give the heading as okay, let us write it down first. Okay, we can give the heading as our phasor diagram of generator operation. Which generator we are talking about? Hello, which generator we are talking about?
Synchronous generator.
Which type of synchronous generator? Okay, we are talking about a cylindrical rotor synchronous generator. Please remember this. Okay, so what we have, so we can think of this in this way. So this is our pole where we had the field winding. Okay, where we had our field winding. So this is our current, and this is the phi f that we are talking about. This is our phi f. Okay, so what we have said? We have said that on no load, the voltage EF induced in the reference phase A lags 90 degree behind phi f. Okay, and what we have also stated that the magnetic axis of the rotor field winding is referred to as the direct axis. Okay, and perpendicular to the D axis is the quadrature of the Q axis. So for a particular cylindrical rotor synchronous generator, what we have, so if this is the D axis, okay, so what we can write? We can write the phi f as this. This is our phi f, as you can see. Then this would be our EF, correct, and this would be our Q axis, and this is our D axis. Understood? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now what we had, again what we also wrote, that since magnetic circuit is assumed unsaturated, so the resultant air gap flux is given by the phasor sum phi r equal to phi f plus phi a. What was phi a? If you see, the phi a was our armature reaction flux. Okay, that the stator currents as balanced steady load is drawn from the stator winding, so the stator currents produce synchronous rotating flux per pole, that is phi A per pole, in the direction of rotation of rotor. This flux is called the armature reaction flux, and it is therefore stationary with respect to the field flux phi F. It is therefore stationary with respect to the field flux phi F. Okay, so what we had, so phi A is in phase with the armature current IA, which causes it. Okay, so let us talk about this one now. So what we had, so our armature current, if this is our armature current, draw the armature current. If this is our armature current IA, okay, so the phi A would be something like this, correct? Okay, and the resultant phi R is this. Sorry. Understood? Okay. Now what we have? This phi R, please see. This phi R induces armature EMF, which equals the terminal voltage Vt. Okay, this phi R induces armature EMF, which equals the terminal voltage Vt. If that is the case, then if this is phi R, then it is inducing the terminal voltage Vt. So this is our Vt then. This is our Vt, correct? So what we can say that this expression can be now completed in the sense, let us complete it, this phasor diagram. So what we can say, we can write this portion as our okay. So this would be our, so this would be our J into what we can write. So this is our IA. So this is nothing but we can extend up to here. So this is our J into IA into XS. Okay. We can write this as J into IA into XS. Okay. কি লিখতে পারি তো? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So please remember that again this angle is our 90 degree. Okay. So if this is our delta angle, then we can say that this is also our delta angle. See properly. And this would be our angle theta. This is our phase angle. Okay. So this is nothing but the phasor diagram of a generator, of a cylindrical rotor synchronous generator. So now let us name the terms individually. What is phi F? Phi F is our field flux. Okay, phi F is our field flux. What is phi A? Phi A is our armature reaction flux. Okay. What is our phi R? It is our resultant flux. Okay. What is our EF? EF is our generated voltage. Okay. No load generated voltage. And what is our VT? VT is the actual voltage that we are getting from our synchronous generator. That is our terminal voltage. What is XS? XS equal to is our XA plus XL. What is XA? XA is our armature reactance and XL is our armature leakage reactance, and the summation of them is known as our XS, which is known as our synchronous reactance. Okay, and this delta is known as our power angle, all load angle, or torque angle. Okay, the delta, as you can see, can also be regarded as the angle between the resultant magnetic field, as you can see, between the resulted magnetic field and the field flux. Okay, this delta value can also be termed or regarded as the angle between the resultant magnetic field, okay, and the field flux. Understood? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so from this one, what we can again write? We can write the equivalent circuit model of a cylindrical rotor synchronous generator. We can write the equivalent circuit model of cylindrical synchronous rotor generator, or a cylindrical rotor synchronous generator. Okay, how can we write the equivalent circuit model of a cylindrical rotor synchronous generator? So what we have EF angle delta. This was our XS. This is our armature current IA. Okay, and this is our terminal voltage VT angle 0 degree. So what is the power delivered at this particular terminal? So the power delivered at the terminal is P plus JQ. Okay, so with that we can write this armature current I equal to, okay, I'm writing it as I. It is understandable that it is the current that is flowing through the armature. Okay, so I can written as EF angle delta minus VT angle 0 degree by J into XS. Okay, so what we can write, P plus JQ equal to, so we can write P plus JQ equal to VT into I conjugate. Correct? If that is the case, then now in this position, if we put the value of I here and we separate the real and the imaginary parts, what is the expression we are getting of P and Q? Tell me. What is the expression of P and Q we are getting? Yes, anybody? What is the expression of P and Q we are getting? P will be coming as, if you solve it, that is putting the value of I here and solving and equating the real and imaginary parts, will be getting P equal to EF VT by XS sin delta, and Q will be equal to VT by XS EF cos delta minus VT. Okay, so this is the active power equation and this is our reactive power equation. Okay, so what is the active power equation? P equal to EF into VT by XS sin delta and Q equal to VT by XS into EF cos delta minus VT. Now please remember, the same thing can be extended for a transmission line also. How can we extend the same thing for a transmission line? We can write in this way. Suppose we have a sending end voltage V1 and we have a receiving end voltage V2, and the transmission line reactance is suppose Z. Okay, where we have taken that it is mu L is equal to X. Why? Because for a high voltage transmission line, X by R ratio is very high, so we can neglect the R. So for this condition, in the same way, we can write the equation for a transmission line, that V1 power transfer through a transmission is V1 V2 by X sine delta, and Q equal to our V2 by X into V1 cos delta minus V2. Okay, we can write in this way also in case of a transmission line. So we can easily bring this concept into our transmission line, where this delta, this delta would be actually the angle between the two voltages. Okay, this is the angle. So as you can see from this particular phasor diagram also, delta here is basically the angle between EF and our VT. Okay, it's the angle between EF and VT. So you can just extend that concept for our transmission line also. Understood till now? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with this, we finish our today's class. Any questions till now? Any questions? Okay, no questions. So I'm stopping the presentation. Okay, I'm stopping the presentation, and I'm okay stopping. Let me stop the recording also.